okay, I got a question for you guys, because I think there was a NAMM product that is potentially the future of modeling, capture, everything. But not because it's so accurate. It's not like any of the other things. This, to me, hits on a trend that I'm starting to see. And I think this thing is the future of modeling. Before I tell you why I think it's the future of modeling, we all kind of looked at it, and I want to get your opinions. Like, it's the Octave Hurricane C1. I don't really know how to say it.
Yeah.
Hurricane. I don't know.
It's not Hurricane. We know that.
Yeah, it's not that. Look, it's on the screen right now, and you can see. You know, we went and checked this thing out. It's a 10-inch touchscreen, Windows 11, basically computer with ins and outs. It's like a really thick iPad, you know, and it comes with this USB. Price $798, is it? $789, something like that. It's about $800. I pre-ordered it. You can pre-order it now, and then they're going to email you when they're ready to charge you and ship them.
Was there like an estimated? This will be ready by then.
I think they said March, early March.
March.
Yeah, they were going to ship early March. Not far at all. Not far at all. And they had a special right now that if you bought, you got the USB for free.
Oh yeah, the Midi controller.
Yeah, and so. What do you guys think of this? Like, how does this appeal to you? And then I'll tell you why I really think this is actually groundbreaking. But does this appeal to you as a player? What do you think of this?
I had this weird experience because we described this very product.
We did
on this podcast.
On this podcast, we've been saying, how come no one makes a VST player?
And I just thought, oh, game over. If I saw that thing, I would. This was my feeling. And then I saw it and was like, I don't really want that. Like it was like this weird. Like I thought I wanted it, and then I saw it and was like, I think this is the opposite direction of what I want. You know? And I think when I left, it was more. Like you were saying, not because it's not good or accurate or sounds whatever. It's more just like that experience of looking at an iPad or like being on a like Windows computer.
Yeah.
It just feels distant from where I want to head, which is I like that the Kemper kind of feels like an amp and has knobs and like sits on a cabinet. I like that, the Tonex is just like sits there and it's got a couple knobs on it. I don't have to know how Windows works or like close a browser or like go through and make sure my outputs are set.
Yeah.
I'm playing within 5 seconds of turning
You want to play
on.
an amp. Yeah. And at best, like an emulation of an amp that feels kind of amp-like, so that you can just get right to the tone.
Yeah.
You don't want to play a computer.
Yeah. And so when I'm at my computer and I pull up like Logic and pull up there's already a little bit of separation there. Like I got to get a channel open and I got to make sure it's set to record, and like all the stuff and pull up the thing. I'm okay with that because I'm at a computer. It's like, this is necessary for me to record this part right now for the song. But when I saw it on a pedal board, I was like, I think I'm out. I think that's not for me.
John, what do you think?
I had a similar thought. It was like, and I was almost feeling this tension of like, this is what I said I wanted. Here it is, but I don't want it. Like, why is that? Do you know what I mean? And I think it's kind of along the same lines. My big thing is like, I can't imagine bringing that onto a stage. And I get like, okay, so then you have the MIDI controller that's separate from the thing. But then I started really thinking about like VSTs and plugins and the channel. And VSTs are something you add to a channel. And the reason you have a channel is because you want to record that channel. It's not like here's a preset and here's a performance, right? Where you've got like different things and you're switching back and forth between them. Now, is it possible? I guess, right? The other thing that he was saying too is like, he's like, then you can just watch movies on it too, because it's a Windows computer. And I was like,
it has all this functionality built in.
We have left the reservation. Now. Now it's like, But again, though, it's like, but it does what I said I wanted it to do.
So I'm not surprised because that was kind of my reaction too. And I thought, how am I going to where would I put this? And Suze, you kept asking, would you put this on the floor or would you put it up higher?
Right.
And it has the foot controller, which kind of feels like, I'd put it up higher, But the ins and outs are down there. So it almost feels like you need to plug into it. So it needs to be kind of close to your guitar. But it really makes me think, it's hitting on this trend, whether this is the form factor or not, that ultimately becomes the most popular, is yet to be seen. But I think that for players like you guys and myself, who are amp guys, we were all amp players. We all had pedal boards and amps, you know what I'm saying? This s'more flavor is just delicious.
You can just smell it nearby.
It really is good.
And it's good, yeah.
We all come from that analog world.
Mm-hmm.
And then we've gone digital. And so like you were saying, Suze, we want our digital stuff to feel a little bit amp-like, to sort of mimic that experience that we had with the amps. I myself really love, a lot of the parameters that you can get in a digital amp, a lot of the flexibility, but I also don't want to menu dive. I don't want to go too deep. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't want to feel inhibited by the interface. Yeah. And so this, to me, I look at this and I go, oh, interesting. I'm actually not the player who would reach for this, but I encounter so many people who use Neural Amp Modeler, who use software VSTs. They live at the computer. They're really producers. Mm-hmm. And this solves the problem for them of, I live in this world. I have all this stuff. Mm-hmm. I want to take these tones with me. And it solves another problem, which is there is an increasing number of open source things appearing that rival in quality what you can buy. Mm-hmm. Now, in true open source fashion, they're usually not as feature rich, right? Mm-hmm. It's usually one thing, and you got to like push all this stuff together to make a fully featured, right? Like Pro Tools always has features before Reaper gets them. Reaper's open source. Logic has beautiful packaging, and you put in the amps and everything, and it's great. It's really designed for a consumer. Reaper's like, the interface is like 3 out of 10, but it works. It works. Right. Like, trust us, it works.
And it's free.
And it's free.
Right.
Like we put the effort where it belongs. You know what I mean? But we didn't do the rest of it. But then you just jump into, Logic, and it's Apple, and it's like, great. I like, this is beautiful, and it works great way. And so this to me hits on this trend that we're seeing now. It's huge on the software side. There's all of this open source. There's Ada, there's Guitar ML, there's NAMM. There's been VSTs that are open source forever. It hits on this, the community can do things that a company's not going to do. And all of these things are out there. And so it, to me, hits this sort of like, we see it on the software side with Genome. You see that Genome just came out from, what's the company? Two Notes. And so Two Notes and Amplifier, that company Amplifier, who makes the amplifier box, they both just released software. And they said, here's our proprietary modeling. Here's our effects. Here's our everything. But also, you can bring in your open source stuff that you already have. We want you to use things outside of our environment and bring it in. And this feels like this is why I say it's the future of modeling. This unit feels like the very first piece of hardware that says, bring in the stuff outside of our proprietary control. Bring in the open source stuff. And so while I'm not sure this form factor or just having a Windows machine is where we're all going to end up, I wonder if the idea, like, try this on for size. What if Quad Cortex 2 says, hey, we're also compatible with the top 30 popular guitar plugins? Valhalla, this delay thing, this from this competing company. We've already mapped all the buttons. We can run it. We made sure we can run it. All you got to do is like buy it and install it, right? Because like we're running our own proprietary thing, but we could run Windows in like a dual boot. What is that called when you run like another operating system in an environment?
Like a virtual machine.
We could, like, what if the Quad Cortex 2 is so advanced it can run a virtual machine of Windows, so you can play your VSTs and drop them in a single effect block in your Quad Cortex.
Look like its own delays and reverbs.
It's all Quad Cortex like we know and love, but one of those blocks, it could actually run a virtual Windows machine to use your favorite Valhalla reverb and just bring it in.
That would be great.
Insanely good. And so that's where I go, the more open source expands, just like in the tech world this happened, right? The more it expands, the more those things become legitimized, the more people build commercial products on open source technology. And it becomes, yes, this code is open source, but we've used it to make a better UI, a better UX, a better whatever. We've integrated it with proprietary stuff to really take the user in mind of what you're trying to achieve. And that becomes like the fish hook to go, oh, you got that huge library of NAMM amps? Come over here. The fences aren't meant to keep you out. Our proprietary walls aren't meant to, we don't want them to keep you out. We want them to keep you in.
I think that, so, okay.
Go ahead. Yeah, you're a programmer, John. You're a software engineer. I want to hear what you think about this.
Well, and this is what's interesting about digital guitar gear. They're all computers.
Right.
We just talked earlier about how the Kemper is programmed with assembly code. You know what else is programmed with assembly code? Mac OS.
Right.
Right?
Right.
Like, it's all the same thing, right? It's all a chip, and you have to program the chip to do what you want it to do. I think really what we're very used to is like, we're very used to pieces of equipment that do a single function, right? Like, I'm looking at that wall of Fender amps over there. Each one of those things
so beautiful.
So beautiful. Each one of those things does exactly one thing, right? It makes your guitar loud. That's all it does.
Totally.
That's all it's for.
No Netflix.
There's no Netflix, but there's, maybe there's reverb or tremolo, right? But there's no like distortion pedal.
Is season 2 out?
There's no. So it's like, I think that's what we're used to. We're used to things that are built for that purpose. Windows is not. Windows is just a generic user operating system.
Yes.
And it is not built for that. And maybe that's a plus for some people. For me, that's a negative because I don't want to mess with Windows. I just want to turn my guitar on. So one thing I researched recently was how to, like, are there people doing this now? Right? And I think I mentioned to you at NAMM, you could do this. What this unit is a computer and an audio interface.
Yes.
In one unit.
100%.
You can take your laptop and you can take your iScarlett 2 and you can take all the power supplies and you can roll up onto a stage and you can set all this up and you can play that way.
My friend Ben did this, but go on.
It's possible.
No, of course.
But it's possible.
Nothing proprietary is going on here. Yeah.
So why don't people do that? Why?
It's a pain.
Well, hang on.
No.
Some people do. And I do think the other problem is, where are you going to put your laptop? My MacBook, I'll tell you one reason I'm not going to do it. Not only even if I wanted to, if I said, these are the tones I want, I wish I could bring it with me. My number one reason would become, I don't want to have my MacBook open. Like, go ahead, finish what you're saying, because I think I have go ahead.
The reason that I would not do that right now is, like, I would much rather call you guys and be like, hey, can I borrow a quad Cortex this weekend?
Yes.
Right? Than bring my own stuff, even though it's my tones, it's what I want. Right? I wouldn't do that because it's not built for that. And to me, and it's cumbersome, and it's like, this stuff is not meant for this. Like, if you step on it, it's going to be broken. If the quad Cortex is designed to be stepped on. Right?
Yes.
That thing is not designed to be stepped on. It's not designed to be on a stage, I'm convinced. It's designed to be portable, yes, and it is.
The Hurricane
Thing. It's not designed to be stepped on. It's a touchscreen computer.
Yeah.
Right?
And so I think they're saying, I think in fairness though, like, they are selling you a foot switch with it. It's like, and that's a separate unit.
I get that.
So do you think this is more appropriate to be not on the floor, but on a stage?
For sure. It has to be not on the floor.
Because that's where I go, this is such a better, this is
right.
And at $800.
So look, here's what I would say. The next iteration of something like this is everything it does right now, but not Windows. And you can create patches out of VSTs or whatever else. And you can assign them to memory, and you can build performances just like you do on a Kemper or whatever else.
In the DAWs, you can do that because you can create presets in your DAW where your DAW saves the loaded VST and the parameters.
No, it totally does.
Yeah. And so that's what you're recalling.
It totally does.
But there's agreed that the user experience to do that is you in a DAW creating a preset and then basically assigning that to what would through Windows to like an external controller.
That's what I'm saying. It's possible, and I don't get me wrong, I applaud them for making this product, because I think it's oh, that's what we've asked for, but it doesn't do this and this and this. And that's the really important thing, is getting at what is the gap between a computer on the stage that runs VSTs with a foot switch and what we actually want.
I think in fairness, though, what you and I are asking for is something more like a consumer computer that we have today, to use an analogy. And where this space is the Commodore 64, where everything comes on a floppy disk. And so the user of that is already a highly technical person who is already like in love with their, like, I do think, you and I are kind of, what we really meant we wanted was, I want a quad cortex or a helix that I can just load my VST and all the knobs come up already pre-done. And it's like, it almost looks like it's native in there.
Yes.
And what they're really responding to, what I think this unit does really well, is if you're one of those people who's been like waiting for quad cortex to give you plug-in integration, I wonder if you're not a person who would like this unit, because you might just like, you're like, I live in my studio. I only play in my VSTs, and I don't really even play any other way. I only record. I only do this. I just want to take it with me for when I'm playing live. This is still my main spot in the studio.
Right.
You know what I mean?
That's what I said.
And I just want to take this with me. And to me, it's like, this is, like you said, it is an interface and a Windows machine, and it's better for that. But also, I think what is cool about this, like, we got to acknowledge, is like, you can just run Ableton from it. Like, so you can run your VSTs, but you can also like cue tracks in Ableton. You're not going. They're not building that into the quad cortex for church anytime soon.
For sure not.
Like, there's not nearly enough demand for that. So a lot of times, if you're the keyboard player, the laptop's not a big deal, because you kind of already have flat surfaces that are easy to get you something. Like it's easier to do. In my church, the drummer often does it, because it's not a big deal for him to have a thing next to it. He cues the track and he cues the metronome. But if you're a guitar player, if you're a band leader who's doing that and you're cueing tracks, to me, this feels like it better integrates with like a guitar rig rather than bringing my MacBook. Because where the guitar player stands on stage, I feel like at a normal performance, I don't always feel like it's very easy to get some sort of a surfacey desk.
No, it has to be
to get a laptop.
It has
kind of got to like go reach for it.
It has to be. Look, and that's the thing. It's like, I think you had said, like, well, now what do I do? How do I plug into it?
Yeah,
and it's like, well, the same way that you used to plug into your amp that was 10 feet behind you,
right?
With a longer cable. Do you know what I mean? This thing just goes further away.
And if I want to make a change, I don't go back to my amp and make a. I got to go to Windows 11.
That's the
and make a change.
And so hold on. So let me explain something.
The VST can be up, like the amp thing can just be up. So like now you don't have to run you don't have to run a DAW. You can just play Helix native.
They had
natively, and it could just look at your Helix.
Right.
You know.
Okay, let me explain something about products. Let me explain something about how products are built and how they become successful.
Yeah.
And this applies to any product. But what they have done is they've created something that appeals to a group of early adopter type people, right?
Yeah, definitely.
There's this idea called crossing the chasm, where there's a bunch of early adopters that are willing to use stuff that is kind of not working well.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
But they really love the technology. They're passionate about whatever it solves. And so they're willing to put up with a lot more things that are problematic than an average customer. But then there's a huge gap.
Yes.
Before you get to mass market appeal.
Yes.
And so what these guys have done is they've begun that process where they have built a product, and this is why it's so important to do this. They've built a product. It will be adopted by these early adopter type people. And if they're smart, they will elicit feedback from those people and say, what do you wish it did? What is the biggest thing that this thing is lacking? What is the thing that we didn't think about? Right? And they'll take that feedback and they will iterate on that product to make it appeal to more and more and more people. And then eventually they will, hopefully crossed that chasm to where it's now they've they've settled on a unit and created it, and it appeals to the maximum number of people.
Yeah.
So I think it's great. I think it's a great step forward. I don't think I would use it yet.
Yeah. Well, I pre-ordered one because I feel like let me try this and see what it feels like.
Yeah.
I'm also not convinced that in my environment I couldn't put this on the floor. I understand that a lot of people go like, there's kind of a joke online where it's like people are like, what do you do about like, is there any protection for the Helix or for the Kemper? Like, what do you do about spilled drinks? And then a lot of people always comment and they're like, what are you talking? Like, where are you playing? But for that guy, he's like, I'm playing in a cheap bar where there might not be a stage. It's actually the corner of a room.
Right.
And maybe there's like a mosh pit.
Right.
And like and like he's like, I don't want it to break, This is just where I play. I'm in an environment where if I mounted this thing on a pedal board, and even more if it was a pedal board with 2 shelves. Remember how we used to have all those pedal boards with a back shelf on the top? My old pedal board used to have that. I feel like that was more popular back 10 years ago or so. If I put this on one of those units, no one's going to step on it. I'm not going to lean forward and step on it. Like if I got to step over a stack of pedals and then that thing's there, I'm not going to step over and put weight on it. Like that's never going to accidentally happen. And if it's in a hard case,
no, I get it.
It's probably not, it's probably going to be just fine. I mean, look, I mean, what we're saying, look, you're telling me I can't break this screen this as easily as I can break that screen? Like the Helix, everything's just got plastic over it. This is a touchscreen. So like no one's saying, don't put a touchscreen on the Quad Cortex. It'll break, right? It's like we all just go, well, there's knobs there and there's a touchscreen there. Don't put your heel on it and push. Like don't do that, right? It's like, so I think there's some level of like, I think you could put this on a board. Now I wouldn't put it out in the middle of nowhere on a stage. Someone might step on it, and I don't know. This is meant to be stepped on. I don't know. I don't know what they've tested. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe it is to settle. But I think a small touchscreen on a stage you could get away with. Maybe I would integrate it into something that had a case for transport and stuff.
Are you worried about communion juice? What about that spilling everywhere?
Hey man, everything needs the blood. You know what I'm saying?
Just sprinkled.
Everything needs the blood.
Look, I mean, I'm sure it would be fine most of the time.
Yeah, certainly in my church setting.
If you drop a guitar on a Quad Cortex, it's probably going to break also, right?
Yes,
or it won't.
A drink or step or whatever.
Yeah, I get it.
You helped me figure out when you were saying everything's a computer. That's it. And when I used to have an analog delay pedal, when the Strymon Timeline came out, I was like, well, look at this thing. This thing does analog and a bunch of it, and then someone's like, well, that's just a computer. When it came out, you're just playing a computer now. I was like, I don't care. This feels like a pedal. Right. It's got knobs. It's got a little screen. I can't add octaves. I can't add just
because the user interface of it is indistinguishable from a pedal.
Yeah, they've limited the capabilities of it so much down to just what an analog delay does. Yeah. You can make it last longer. You can make it louder and darker and brighter. That's it. And so that's like the perfect marriage of like, it's digital, but it's also not confusing to me. So a product like this actually goes way the other way and says it's digital, and there's like a lot to overcome for me to program stuff and make sure everything's routed correctly.
But I think it's for the guy who goes, I wish I had my computer, and they're like, here, this is your computer, but way more portable.
Totally, which isn't me.
Right.
No, and that's the thing. There are people that
are going crazy.
There are people that are doing that are bringing their laptops
like
and their interfaces to a gig, and they're doing it, and it's fine.
What I wanted was the Valhalla delay and reverb in a timeline pedal.
Right.
Bring them onto my pedal board, but not like this. No,
totally. And Susan and I were talking earlier. I was going I think in our head, it's like, I wish someone could say, this unit is here's the Quad Cortex in form factor, right? It's got knobs and it's got these buttons, and that's not so far away from what we got, what this is, except it's separate pieces, right? There's buttons and there's a touch screen, right? But it's separate pieces. But it'd be great but you still got to set up all the routing and the, you've got a computer and a controller, and it's just a small computer to take with you, and it's touch screen. It's great. You don't need a keyboard. You don't need a mouse. You'll be able to manipulate it live when you're out there. So it's a better use when you're outside than a laptop would be, if you want to go that way.
I think I would argue it's actually the same as a laptop. It's just a different form factor. Everything about it's the same.
Yeah.
You know?
But I would say I'm not going to put my laptop on the floor. I'm not going to put it on I don't know. I'm worried about my laptop getting stolen if I take it out, like to a bar. I wouldn't leave a MacBook at a bar on the stage.
Well,
I'd be shutting that thing down, unplugging it, and taking it with me after sound check, which defeats the purpose of sound check.
Well, because
this
also,
I think you get away with.
Yeah, but if you replaced instead of thinking about it as your laptop, that's a $3,000 MacBook Pro. If you replace that with like a $400 HP,
yes,
right?
True.
All of a sudden, it's really just more about, well, I don't want to break it.
Yeah, right.
Right.
So I think what we really ideally we'd love it if the Quad Cortex, if that unit or that form factor, whatever, came and said, "Here you go. If you just plug into your computer, we've already made it compatible with the top 25 plugins that are used.
Right.
All the button routing and mapping is done." Yeah. What do you play? Do you play Helix Native? Do you play Neural DSP? Do you play these things? We've already made it feel like a thing.
Right.
Does that make sense? And then it's like, just choose what you own or what you already want to buy. And then you can combine sounds from this VST that you like, this, right. And maybe the interface then would look.
But that's the thing, though. You don't need Quad Cortex to do that. Like, all of that is possible right now. You could get a Looptimus pedal or Morning Glory or a Morningstar, and you could set up a cheap laptop and an audio interface, and you could wire up all the MIDI.
I know you don't need a Quad. I just meant I think you want a unit that is so compact, like it's the screen and the buttons in one, like the look of that, rather than getting like multiple.
But
things.
you can't do that, and that's the thing. You can't do that without building a specific user interface just for that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Because yes, Quad Cortex is just a computer.
Yes.
But it's a computer that only does one thing.
Yes. And it's their software.
It's not confusing to use.
And it's not confusing to use. It's like the Apple TV. The Apple TV is just a tiny little iPad with no screen.
Right.
That's all it is. Actually, the very first Apple TVs had the same hardware as a Mac Mini did. Right? It was literally the same, and it just ran a modified version of Mac OS or OS 10 at that point, right?
It just had apps for watching shows and stuff.
Well, and it would just launch the Apple TV app when it first opened. Like, that was it. Wow. You know what I mean? Now it's like a full operating system, right? TV OS is the whole thing, which, again, it's just Mac OS under the hood with a different skin on top. That's all it is.
Yeah.
Right? So it's like, this is not groundbreaking technology. These things aren't new.
Yeah, totally.
It's really just a matter of finding what's and I'm a huge fan of products built to serve a specific purpose and serve that purpose well, not products that can do all of these things.
Because on the software side, the open source stuff has started about 18 months ago, and it has not stopped, and it didn't exist before that.
Right.
Not open source, but open source capture tech.
Sure.
Like, it kind of just sprung up. All of a sudden, it's like open source IR loader, open source IR creator, open source this, open source that. And this is like kind of it's just the open source stuff's coming into the guitar community. And I think that's creating a demand for hardware because people are using it and they're going, I like free, I like sharing. You've even seen on NAMM, not even the people who do NAMM, but a third party has said, we'll create the directory for NAMM. So put all your stuff here. Like, they went, oh, we like Quad Cortex pages and the app for sharing. We'll build our version of that, but it's for NAMM. Right. And it wasn't Steve. It wasn't NAMM. It was a third-party guy who said, I just like NAMM, and I wish there was a place we could all deposit our stuff, rate it, put descriptions. He just wanted to look nice. And so...
you guys are... This is so funny because it's like worlds colliding for me. Yeah. So, like... Everyone's roughly heard of like the Linux operating system, right?
Yes.
You sound like every Linux user ever, right? It's like, we have everything you guys have.
No. I don't mean that. I just
but that's what it is, right? It's like
trying
all of this stuff is free. Why would you pay so much money for that over there?
No, that's not my opinion because I think from a user standpoint, it's all pretty shitty to use right now.
Yeah,
but I acknowledge that someone at least saw this is so terrible to use. I can make it better this way.
And here's the thing: is that there are always people who just love tinkering.
Yeah,
and that's It's like making the thing work is just as satisfying as playing it when it does.
So
Right.
true.
Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so that's the thing. It's like, this is who this appeals to right now. And that's what I mean.
Yeah.
That's the whole crossing the chasm thing.
Yeah.
You've got all of these early adopters who are willing to like figure out how to write code to make this stuff work together. 99.9% of people are never going to even approach that.
And people buy products, not technology.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
So that's the thing. It's like, and again, I'm all for it, right? Like, the Linux operating system is the reason that we have the technology, and I mean like just globally, that we have today.
Yeah.
Right. It is what Mac OS is built on, or Unix, right? It's like the things that these are good ideas, and we should develop them.
People build on them and create great products.
And that's the thing. I've been a user of open source software for 20 years in other, in my other life or whatever. But the whole point is,
you mean you don't only come on Guitar Friends?
I know this isn't my full-time job.
You have a day job.
Guitar Friends is not the only thing I do. But the whole point is, open source software is excellent, but it also comes with no guarantees. It comes with no returns. There's no support. There's no nothing. It's up to you to make it work or not work.
Yeah.
Right.
And most people are not interested in that.
Yes.
I'm thinking of a continuum right now. This is like me summing up what I'm hearing you guys go back and forth.
Yeah.
It's like everyone plays analog delays. Then some people look at the timeline and they go, that's not rock and roll. That's a computer. I'm staying over here.
Right.
But then I was like, I'll play that. So I jumped over the timeline. Now I look over and look at Kemper, and people are like, I'll play a timeline, but not a Kemper. That's not rock and roll.
Totally.
Play an amp.
Totally.
I was like, no, I'll jump into that. So then I jumped into that. So now I'm far away from the analog delay.
Right.
And now I'm sitting here looking at this thing going, that's not rock and roll. I want to play I will go no further.
Totally.
Because it's like it feels
That
less
is.
rock and roll.
It really
But
is.
to the guys that only play the deluxe memory man, a timeline is like an abomination.
Right.
It's got a screen, it's got presets, it's got a power. Like, no. I'm not into that.
And they see a product and they just think that's not for me.
That's not for me, man.
Right.
Somewhere Moby is planning his next world tour, and he's going, finally, a box that will let me run my crazy multimedia slideshow while I play weird sounds on the guitar.
Yeah.
He's found his
in
rig.
a pedal.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, I never that,
Totally.
right? And
That's
he's
a good endorsee,
and he's like, I've never found an amp that does this. Right? It's like no unit lets me also do this, you know?
Yeah.
Super interesting.
No, I applaud it. I hope it goes somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's so early too. I like what you're saying about iterations.
So early.
They could get this in a couple iterations where I would make that jump.
For sure.
But can I tell you the coolest thing I saw, though? It has to do with compatibility. I asked the guy who was there, I was like, so this runs everything? He's like, anything on Windows 11. And he goes, I just went over to the Genome booth and got a copy, and we made Genome run on this. He literally, because it's Windows 11, he was able to walk over to another booth who had just released a product at the same trade show he's releasing his, and he got it to work. He just got it to put it on. And so I was actually sitting there. I looked at both Genome and I looked at this product. And for me, I looked at this and went, I could put NAM and Helix Native together on this unit. But then I saw they launched Genome, and I went, well, no, I would just play Genome instead.
Right.
I would just put my NAM captures into Genome and probably play their effects. They seem fine, from the demo I saw. I haven't tried Genome. Yeah. And that, to me, is so cool that, there's probably better software in VST coming out next year. The other thing is, nothing stops a software maker next year from pre-mapping all the stuff on a popular piece of hardware and vice versa. Do you know what I mean? It's all possible if you know what people are going to use. So I just think, man, there's clearly this shift where people in the software world, Genome and Amplifier, are acknowledging, I have a new piece of software. I want to get people in the door. I want people to use it. And the open source thing is happening. And a lot of people have great amp tones there, and they've got captures. Their favorite tones are there. If I let them use it on my platform, I can give them the additional benefit, and maybe they'll come in and stay.
The other thing, yes.
And it creates this demand for hardware that somebody's got to fill.
Well, the other thing that's really interesting about it is VSTs right now, up until this point, are primarily for recording. They are not primarily for live performance.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And I think what we're seeing is like digital, like someone said it when we were there, someone was like, look, it used to be like all these fenders on the wall that a guitar amp's main purpose was to make the guitar loud enough to hear. Mm-hmm. Now it's just another effect that's happening on the signal, right? And so it's not making it louder. What's making it louder is something way not related to your guitar rig at all.
The PA system.
Right? Mm-hmm. Exactly. And so now it's just an effect. And so I feel like the VST thing, now that people, like you said, like so many people are jumping toward the digital, and even people who are maybe a few steps behind are more open than they've ever been to digital stuff. I think this is a clear marker that like, this is where people are headed. Mm-hmm. Our guitar amps are going to become more and more like computers as we go from here. They're not going to go backwards.
Yes, correct. Correct.
Right?
We're not going to all go back. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, unless you're like one of the internet is a fad people. Remember that?
Right.
Yeah. The internet's a fad.
This will be gone in 5
Yeah.
years.
No one's going to be using the internet in 5 years. Last thing I'll say, I think big advantage of this unit over a computer. I own a computer and an interface. I could bring it to church. I have no idea how to tell my computer, please don't look up my email while I'm in the middle of an audio performance. Please don't search for an update.
Right.
Give me some weird notification sound. Please mute all my texts.
Right.
Please mute all notifications. Please
don't go to sleep.
Please do nothing. Yes. Please do nothing but what I'm trying to do. Yes.
Please don't go to sleep and make me type in my password in the middle of my guitar solo.
I don't even know how to turn that stuff off.
Right.
And if I need it to work, just don't do anything else.
Right.
I don't know how to do that. And that actually feels way more scary. Even once I learn how to do it.
Right.
It feels way more scary that I would overlook something. This unit, I'd never sign into my email.
Of course
I'd never
not.
turn on any
It
notifications.
does one thing.
Exactly.
I'd never do anything. I would just put this on. I might watch Netflix on a plane or something.
Oh boy.
Because then I don't need to put it in my bag.
Oh my
I can just hold it as an iPad.
That's a thick iPad.
Bunch of cables coming out of it.
Your headphones are
pedal
coming
You're
out.
like, but does your iPad have stereo ins and outs?
Yeah. I could even distort and delay my Netflix shows.
I'm controlling. Yeah. I'm choosing my Netflix from Midi over here on the device.
You got a foot switch. You're like, no, I don't like this
You're
one.
like fast forwarding.
Foot switch.
You could EQ them. I love it.
I wonder what it sounded like if I put the Valhalla reverb on Stranger Things.
Oh my gosh.
So much better. All of it would be better.
Wow. I think that sums it up, basically.
I think that does sum it up.
That's what we really want.
Wow. If you haven't put your Valhalla reverb on Stranger Things,
What
You
have
haven't lived.
yeah.
What are you even
Come
doing?
on. You know?